Hi guys, welcome to the Earthly Delights podcast with myself and Jim O'Connell.
How are we?
This is the first podcast and it's about the mother and father, which basically we will be talking about Jim's late mother and my fairly newly divorced parents, I guess. But before we start any of that, we're going to start with the segment What's the Crack? Jim, if you want to explain what's the crack to some of the non-Irish natives.
Crack is a word used commonly in Ireland to refer to news, gossip, fun. Like it can sometimes be related to banter, often banter, yeah. But we would always say like, "What's the crack? Like, what's up? What's the news? How's it going?" That kind of, and yeah. That's the general the general summary.
Right, which is important because blokes, we don't really ask each other how we're doing, as in we don't expect an answer. It's more of just a hello than anything else. That's why we're going to start off with what's the crack. So I'll start off then, Jim. What is the crack with you? How's it all going?
Crack is good, man. Just settling back into the farm that I'm volunteering at over in Denmark. After a lovely 3 weeks with the family and friends, really got to spend a lot of time with my dad and sister, which was great. Yeah, it was much needed, and got to see the majority of my friends that I wanted to see, and the majority of them were in good spirits. And yeah, it was all around good trip, and looking forward to getting the year off, I guess. What about yourself?
Nice. And any New Year resolutions, or we're not going down that road?
I'm not really a resolution guy, but I read a book over Christmas called Born to Run, and maybe we can talk about it at a later stage, which focuses on a tribe in Mexico that run all the time, like huge, lengthy distances all the time, and don't really get injured. And the guy writing the book was just fascinated by this. But anyway, it's impossible to read that book and not go, wow, I just want to whack on a pair of shoes, or not, because he encourages to run barefoot and just get out. And since I read that book, I've told myself that I do want to run in a long distance race pretty soon, probably in the next 5 6 months.
And so have you got like a marathon or something like a set date that you can pin your hat on and go, right, I'm going to run whatever it may be, the Copenhagen Marathon on March the 25th, for example.
There is no set date right now, but Seb, you know me, and I'm a man of my word, and I can almost guarantee, no, I can guarantee that, barring some sort of injury or something, that by June I would have racked up some official kilometers under my belt.
Okay, well, we'll keep you to that when we do a summer podcast. We can see if that's the case, isn't it?
Yeah, um, it will definitely happen before the summer. I'll be running long distance before the summer, I promise. And what about yourself, man?
Yeah, good. Like you said, I was back in the UK for the holidays. Obviously, Ireland is in the UK, but back on that
The
island.
region.
Yeah, the region, that same area, that same patch of grass.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, no, it was good. Saw like a lot of my friends, some of whom I hadn't seen in quite a while, so that was good. There's one day where I always have this like reunion every year because my friends are just terrible for meeting up. Even though I'm the only one who actually lives abroad, they kind of hardly any of them ever meet up throughout the year. So we've all got together on the 27th, and we just always just go to like a pub at like midday and just like make a den out there and just stay there for like 10, 11 hours.
Do you rent a table?
Yeah, we just like we book a table, and
Right.
like, so we were given like this upstairs space, and we just stayed there for like however long, and then after a couple of pints, well, not a couple, almost a dozen pints. Apparently, I can't remember, but apparently I said some things that may have put people the wrong way. So the morning after, there are a few apologies being sent. You've got to know when you've made a mistake. Be man enough to admit it.
Of course.
So yeah, so I had to make a few apologies. So that wasn't great. But the night itself was fun, at least I think, from what I remember. And then And then yeah, just saw my family, which was good. Had a few conversations, which I guess we'll get into later into the podcast. But no, it was good. Obviously living in Madrid, I don't see them as often as I guess most people see their families. So some needed time together. And then by the time I was like flying back, like just a few days before I needed to fly back to Madrid, I was kind of ready to come back. I was going to say come back home, and because to me Madrid is home now. Um, England kind of it feels like a home away from home. I don't know. It's weird. I almost feel like a foreigner when I'm there. In fact, when I went to London, quite funny. I went to London, like flew into Stansted, and they had like a little booth to get like National Express tickets, and I had to get one to get to my mate's house because he lives in Brixton. My mate was like, "Oh, you have to go to this station. It's called well, it's pronounced Southwark, right? But it's spelled South and then Wark." So me in my Spanish mode, I'm reading it literally. So I go to the person like at this booth. I'm like, oh, can I get a ticket to Southwark Station? And he's like, oh, Southwark, yeah, 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 cool. And then I'm like, yeah. And then obviously like I'm still full on Spanish mode. So I want to say to him like, can I like pay contactless? But I can't. It's not coming to me. Like all that my brain is saying is puedo pagar con tarjeta. It's like it's the only thing my brain is saying, but I know I cannot say to this Englishman, puedo pagar con tarjeta, right?
You should have.
So I get my phone out, mate. I get my phone out and I just point to my phone. Like I just look at him and point to my phone. And bless him, he was like, "Oh, we're contactless," and I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And he must have thought, "Who the hell is this guy?" Like his accent's perfect, but he can't put two words together. And then the next day, I went to meet an old housemate of mine who lives in London as well. We met up in like King's Cross, and so basically, like for people who don't know, in Madrid, you don't have to press the button for the green man. It's on a timer, and obviously in England you do have to press the button. Anyway, so I'm at this crossing and I must be there for at least 5 minutes. I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is taking forever. And then some man comes up behind me and like presses the button and just looks at me like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, for God's sake!" And then we got to this cafe and I had brunch or whatever. And then like so made the order, and the waiter was like, "Is that everything for you?" And I went, "Oh, sí, gracias." And I was just like, "Oh, for God's sake, this just needs to stop. Like, this just needs to stop." So it was weird, but it took about a day for me to fully like acclimatize back into like English mode again. But it was nice. I made up for it. I had about three fish and chips, two Chinese because like in Spain the Chinese isn't the same. A good few double deckers. So no, it was an enjoyable time. I put on about 10 kg. So I mean, I should probably take you up on that running long distance because Lord knows I need it. But no, all good, man. Starting off the new year. Just well, it's exciting, I guess, and it was launching this podcast, so that's exciting. Been a long time in the waiting. Was it been 6 months, maybe, if not more? So that's like exciting, long overdue. And yeah, just see where this year takes us, really. So without further ado, let's get into the main topic then, which is like we said, is titled "Mother and Fathers," where we're going to start off talking about Jim's mum, and then we'll go on from there, and we'll talk about my parents and my family situation. Okay, well, there's no real good place to start, so I reckon we should just get straight into it. And if you could just tell us all what's your story and what happened, really.
Well, when I was like 6 or 7, my mum was diagnosed with cancer. And while your memory isn't that good at that age, you just have a constant, or what I have anyway, is like a memory of just my mum just not being in good health, basically.
Right.
And this just deteriorated until when I was 8 or 9, it would just be like heavy stints away from home, kind of, until when I was 9, she passed away. And since then, it's honestly because, like you said, divorce has been such a common trend.
Yeah.
I've kind of felt lucky in a way because I see a lot of anger and angst and bitterness amongst families, and I don't. While death is obviously very difficult to comprehend and come to terms with, the passing of my mother was. I look at it as a positive thing because it brought definitely my family closer, and it made me realize from an early age that you can't really go through these difficult things alone. You know.
So obviously, as a 9-year-old, it's hard for your friends to kind of have that conversation. But as they've got older and become more aware, have you noticed that they've come to you? Have you become almost the spokesperson for bereavement? Because I've noticed that with some of my friends where they've gone through something similar and they've become the go-to person for that specific type of suffering, I guess.
I would say definitely the first few years it would be like I would kind of try and avoid bringing it up because like when you're a kid like 12, 13, 14, you're just talking about football and shit. It's not really like a topic of conversation, and kids don't really have the emotional wherewithal to really tackle this with the nuance it needs. So it was probably only until I hit like late teens, maybe 17, 18, 19, that I really had probably what I would describe as good conversations about it with friends. Um, Also, like at the time when I was kid, like directly after my best friend at the time, I just spent a lot of time with him because he was just incredibly funny. And I remember I just kind of wanted to spend as much time with him as I could because he
Is
just
that just escaping?
probably
Like
yeah
just forget about
yeah
it, have a
yeah,
good
yeah,
time.
probably. And then yeah, as the years gone on, it would just it just became easier because people are more understanding, I guess. Yeah. Also, like at the time, it's quite rare.
Right.
You don't have
Yeah.
that many people to link with. And then as a few of my friends had parents that were getting divorced, while it's not the same, there are some strong similarities, and that became definitely facilitated me being more okay talking about these things.
Right. And so, how was that within the household? Because obviously, there was your sister and your dad who were still reeling from it as well. I'm interested to know with whether your sister, as she's older than you, if she almost took up that maternal mantelpiece. Not to say that she replaced your mother, but she became a more caring figure rather than just seeing you as a sibling. And also, how did your extended family react to that? Did it bring you guys closer, or did it leave you almost estranged from them as you couldn't relate to them anymore because your lives were so much different now? And obviously, they're also dealing with that grief, so they're dealing with it in their own way.
So when actually only a few months ago, I was talking to my godmother about this, and she was telling me because I don't really remember it, but she was telling me that after my mom died, like my dad was like inconsolable, like he was just not a functioning member of society for a long time. Yeah, like it knocked him for six. He was like
Which is obviously like normal, but
yeah.
yeah.
And I think my dad took it particularly hard because his mom actually died when he was 9.
Oh Jesus.
Yeah, and he definitely had trouble dealing with that, and probably still hasn't dealt with that. And then when he met my mom, I think he found like this is a woman that can provide things for me that I need. And when she died, I think he was really like dejected. Really, just he didn't really know. He felt aimless, and I think if he didn't have me and Katie, like he would, I don't know what would have happened. He really looked at it as it was his just job now to look after me and Katie.
Right.
So after that, I mean, like you mentioned, after the the extended family were huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm very close to people who I'm not really, strictly speaking, very close to in terms of blood.
Right.
But they, you know, they helped out badly. Like we needed a lot of help, and they were there. You know, even like my neighbor would cook meals for us because my dad wouldn't be home. Just things like this, and things that you don't forget. So it that sort of thing, I really do look at it as a buzz. I really like. It sounds strange, but it really has helped me appreciate things that I probably wouldn't appreciate otherwise.
Right.
In terms of my sister, I definitely wouldn't say that she has become like a maternal figure at all. I think she was.
What's the age difference?
She's 2 years and 9 months older.
Okay, so it's not like old enough where you go like I've got to take care of my younger brother now because realistically you're in the same.
We're
Like,
both struggling.
so
now.
like you're 9, she's 11. It's like she's like 17 or something where she can go. No. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and only I'd say like the last 2 or 3 years that me and Katie have really like become stronger together. Yeah.
So does she come up in conversation nowadays, or is she almost banished to the past because her passing away is still too much to bear, especially for someone like your dad?
I mean, she definitely comes up, and it's not avoided. No, definitely, yeah, it's definitely not avoided. But also I think me and my sister are more forthcoming with reflections or whatever compared to my dad, because, for instance, we watched this movie 2 weeks ago, and the last time my dad saw it was in the cinema with my mom, and it really was like a knock to my dad. It was just like, oh God, this was the last time. Yeah.
Right.
And so it would, like, me and my sister would be absolutely fine talking about this, and so with my dad, but my dad would definitely have a heavier heart about it because yeah.
And I remember you telling me that your mom was an only child and that her parents or your grandparents no longer alive. So it's almost as if that whole side of the family is no longer part of the living family anymore. So how was that?
Not to overcomplicate things now, but my mom was an only child, but she grew up basically with the extended family. So she would treat her cousins like brothers and sisters. Okay. And that's why we had so much help. So like when I mentioned earlier that I'm not particularly blood close to these people.
Yeah.
They would look at us like first cousins, like brothers and sisters. So like when my mom died, they would be helping my dad with everything, with other things as well as my dad's side. But my dad's side is actually way smaller.
Right. Okay.
It was the extended family on my mom's side that would help us thoroughly.
Okay. And now that a decade's passed and you've had time to reflect, and obviously it will have changed you as a person, have you become more empathetic and more understanding, especially as a bloke, to your male friends who may be going through something similar or have gone through something similar, and you can now be the rock for them as you understand exactly what they're going through?
I definitely think that I try anyway to use this experience to help others in a similar time. Yeah, because I know I had it to an extent when my mom died, but I would definitely have appreciated more, of course. Yeah. And so if something happens with similar friends, I do want to say that while I can't provide too much, like you do have to process these things on your own and do it in your own way. You do need help. You do need other people to listen to, even if it's just listening, even if it's just, going on a walk or like playing football with them, just and not making it weird. Like I remember, like we had counselling. Me and my sister had counselling.
Right. How was that? Was that
worthwhile? Or? I don't really remember it,
right.
But I do remember. Man, it's just like, it's real nice. I remember being in a room with people whose moms and dads had died, and it was just nice.
So it wasn't like a one-on-one therapy?
It wasn't group. Yeah, it was group.
Right. Okay.
And it was just real nice to know, like, oh yeah, like that guy said that, and I feel the same.
Right. Okay.
And it's just nice to know, like, oh, I'm not alone. So the exact same happens now, and like if I'm going through some things, or if my friend's going through some things, like basically I think I'm way more frank with how I'm doing, whether it's really happy or
sad or whatever. Yeah. And how are the Irish with sharing your feelings and being honest with each other? Because obviously in England and Britain we have the stiff upper lip syndrome, and I think things are changing now, but that's definitely how it is in general, and especially among guys, it can take us by surprise when one of us wants to open up, and I don't think we know how to react. But I did notice that when I came to visit you in Dublin, people were much more sincere in their listening to you, and they seemed to pay attention to you. And so I wonder if that kind of converted into a frankness and an openness when it comes to those intimate, difficult conversations.
So it's funny you say that, right? I remember my nan used to say this, and my nan obviously had the best intentions, but I only think about it recently. My nan used to say, when you laugh, the world laughs with you, and when you cry alone.
Right.
And
Stuff.
I remember she said that to me, and it was obviously like to encourage me to be happy and not to
Yeah.
be sad. But it's like, that is a terrible, terrible approach. In terms of the Irish thing, my big criticism of like a general Irish trend is that I feel like we don't ever talk about death. We feel like talking about death is depressing, so we better not do it. But then when we experience death, we're absolutely overwhelmed because we haven't prepared ourselves at all.
Right.
I mean, I've told you this before. I think I'm just incredibly lucky with my friends that you've met me. That I do think they're just very good listeners.
Right.
You know, it's definitely not like an Irish trend per
Right.
se. No, I mean, I don't know. You'd have to ask somebody else.
Someone who's not Irish.
Yeah, somebody who's not Irish. To me, I still have conversations where I feel like people definitely are listening
Right.
on a regular basis.
Okay.
Because we love chit chat as well. Like in England, like the chit-chat thing. But no, I feel like I'm really lucky with my friends.
And would you say that you have an active relationship with your mum? And what I mean by that is you hear and see some people say that some of their past relatives, for example, loved butterflies, right? So every time that they see a butterfly, they feel as if it's their relative just looking down at them or just saying, I'm still here, like I'm still by your side. For example, for me, with my nonna Nunzia, who was like my Italian nan, she her favourite saint, she was very religious, and her favourite saint was Padre Pio. And every now and again, I will see a picture of Padre Pio, whether it's in the street or in some sort of church. And to me, it's just maybe something that I've made up, but it's something that I find comforting, and I like to think that it's her saying, I'm still here, don't worry, I haven't completely gone.
That's beautiful, man.
One of my uncles told me a few months ago, he said that, like the Latin meaning of the word inspired is to live in the spirit of.
All right. Oh, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And since he said that, I've really took that on for people who are dead and alive. So, for instance, like I just left after spending a year in the Netherlands with like some really good people, and like there's a chance that I won't see these people again or for a very long time. But I feel like if you are inspired by them, if you really appreciate what they brought to your life, you can live with that in your mind, and that's the exact same. Unconsciously, that's exactly how I live with my mom in my mind. The things that I really appreciated, that I've really valued from her, I definitely tried to live by, for sure.
And would you say that maybe your mum lives on within you, not in a Lion King Mufasa type of way, but in the sense of within myself, for example, I see a lot of traits that my mum has, that my dad has, and sometimes scarily similar, whereby I'll say something or I'll do something and I'll go, oh my God, that is literally what my parents used to do or still do now. And I was wondering if people see your mum in you, like if you do anything or if you say anything or a certain mannerism that reminds them of her through you.
So I didn't mention this, but what happened was after my nan lived with us, as far as I know, like since I was born, if not shortly after. And so when my mum died, my nan was still alive.
Right.
And she lived 2.5 years longer. And those 2.5 years were massive in like my formation, I think. And I really remember very frequently my nan saying things like, you're a Shannon, like that's like a name.
Right.
You're not an O'Connell.
Right.
Like
okay.
joking,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
saying,
yeah,
and my dad was like, yeah, you're probably right.
Right.
So in terms of do I think I'm really like my mom, it's difficult because like,
Yeah.
we're so young, and definitely it's just when you spend so much more time with somebody. Like for instance, right, because I've been away, and when I go home now, my sister is living with my dad, and honestly I come home and my sister be asking me the exact same questions my dad is asking me. And the exact same responses.
Yeah.
I'm like, Katie, you're turning into my dad.
Yeah.
You need to sort this out. Like,
Yeah.
So I think it's bound to happen when you just spend so much time with a person.
Yeah. And now when you're with your mum's cousins, obviously who they knew her like very well, would you do something or say something where they go, "Oh, that's Carol, like there she is," or do they kind of just keep it stum and not say anything to you in fear of upsetting you?
I think some members have said that I'm more like my nan.
Right.
I've actually said that, like,
Yeah.
that's Mavis.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. But also, I definitely do things like my dad as well.
Yeah.
Terrible with my hands.
One of the things that I really wanted to ask you for my own reasons and because I think people will find it really interesting, is through your personal experiences, is there anything that you would have improved in the backlash? So in the grieving process, is there anything that you'd have done differently or you would have asked your dad to do differently or certain family members knowing what you know now? Also, it struck me that your dad dealt with the passing of his parent when he was younger. And so, obviously, whilst I completely empathise with the fact that he's lost the love of his life and that he was completely not for six, I was kind of shocked to some extent that he wasn't there kind of saying to you, "Look, son, I've gone through the exact same thing at your age. This is what's going to happen. This is how it's going to feel. Like, don't worry about anything." Yeah, that was interesting to me.
Yeah, it's funny, because so why I think my dad didn't do that
Right.
is because my dad wasn't able, like, it was just a different time. It was the 60s, and the 60s in Catholic Ireland, where my dad wasn't allowed to go to his mom's funeral because, no, you don't go. You're too young. It means not enough to you to miss school, basically. So my dad never fully got to say goodbye
Right.
to his mother. So I feel like his process dealing with the grief after, it was completely different to my process. So I feel like my dad was like probably still dealing with some of that to this day, and I don't feel like he was emotionally comfortable with saying, "Here, son, you're probably going to feel like this. You're probably going to feel like this." But what I do think my dad did like so well was to just provide a home where me and Katie never felt uncomfortable.
Right.
So, like, for instance, we would come home, we would just have shit days.
Yeah.
And my dad's like, "That's absolutely fine. That's absolutely normal."
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I totally understand that.
Right.
And, like, regardless of the age, like, it just was nice. For instance, I know a lot of people struggle if somebody's if one of their parents dies and then the mother or the father starts seeing somebody else,
Yeah.
or if it's a divorce and they start seeing somebody else and then they
Yeah.
come into the house and then all of a sudden they feel like it's like a territorial thing, like
Yeah.
they're taking over. My dad was always like, "This is your home.
Mm-hmm.
This is our home. Like, you're perfectly, this is your domain. Like, express yourself, regardless of if it's ups and downs." And so while my dad didn't give me the kind of, "Son, I think you're going to feel like this," because I don't think he was given that at all.
Right.
Back in the day, my dad was like, "Sorry, get on with it." Kind of,
You're a man of his era.
Yeah. So, and in terms of like a wider thing, I guess I'm really lucky just to look back at my dad. I had the group counselling, which was great. My school was relatively good because there was another guy in my year whose mom had died, and then there was two others that were experienced like tough divorce. So like we kind of knew, we had like weekly meetings for a while, and it was kind of like a shared thing. We knew what was going on. I mean, of course, there are just little things that could be improved, but it's difficult because, I wish that my friends had the capabilities of going like.
Sorry to jump in, but what should someone do in that situation when a friend of theirs or a loved one has lost a loved one? Because in my own personal situation, I've had two really good friends lose their dads. One happened when I was 16 years old, 16 or 17 at school. And the other one I was a bit older, I think I was about 18. And in both circumstances, I don't think I did enough. In the first one, we asked, basically, one of our best friends, he lost his dad, and there happened to be another guy in the school who'd gone through something similar beforehand. So we asked him, we said, "Look, like, our mate's just lost his dad, like, what's the best way to act?" And he just said, "The best way is to act normal, don't pity him, be the normal friends that you are." And so we did that, but basically, I felt like in doing that, we almost acted as if nothing had ever happened, and obviously, something absolutely monumental, life changing had happened, something that would mark him for the rest of his life. And then with my second friend, he lost his dad, and we sent him flowers and a letter and saying sorry. But we did that typical British thing of, okay, let's leave him now to grieve in his own time. And again, I felt like I wasn't there for him. And by the time I reflected on it and thought I could have done more, it was already too late. Then it's 2, 3 years down the line. So what should someone do in that situation?
It is, because I was going to say, it is real different, because if there are people that want to kind of just go, kind of put it on a shelf and kind of want to say, yeah, this was shit, but I prefer if you didn't bring it up.
Right.
And I can't tell them that.
No, obviously
that's,
not.
Yeah, I mean, what I would describe as what I believe is like a healthy way of going about it is like more mere presence. Like it was just, see, again, it was difficult comparing the age and stuff, but the idea of just being around people and then just knowing, for instance, that it would be cool if I said like, oh, here, I was crying today, like it came up today,
Right.
or if my friend says something that, while he might not have the direct experience, he expresses a similar emotion because something else happened.
Mm-hmm.
That unconsciously, that makes me think, oh, it's cool for me to say this to him then.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
So, you like, opening up might make him open up.
Yes.
Right.
Like, instead of you going, here, man, I'm sorry, and if you ever want to talk about it, talk about it. But it's all good and well you telling me that, but really you don't mean that.
Yeah.
Or unfortunately, what happens in Ireland is, like, after a fucking rake of pints, somebody's like, oh, here, if you ever want to talk about it, but they don't even mean it.
Yeah.
Or if they do mean it, but they're not.
They have the vocabulary to even have the conversation.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing,
Yeah.
And also, I've seen a lot of people who haven't processed it at all, like their like divorces and stuff, and when they're fucking real pissed, they'll just be chatting like about this and like very passionately, and you can see that it's irksome, and then the next day, nothing.
And what are your thoughts on this? With my friend from sixth form, I made a conscious effort not to bring up my dad around him. For some reason, I thought that would make him feel upset, just because normally when you're talking about parents, the conversation is reciprocal. So if I'm talking about my mum and dad, eventually we're going to get on to talking about your mum and dad. So I just thought, well, if I don't ever talk about my dad, then his dad will never come up in conversation and it won't make him feel awkward. But looking back on it, I'm thinking maybe I thought too much about it. Maybe he would never have cared anyway. So I was just wondering if you noticed something similar with yourself, or what would you think of that?
I remember when I was a kid, after my mum dying, like maybe 12 or 13, I remember one of my mates would particularly complain about his mom often. I remember her saying, like, here, man, like, you're kind of lucky. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that his criticisms aren't valid. In like his mom might be doing things that are really upsetting him.
Yeah.
And he should probably have that conversation with his mom, So for you to be like, oh, I don't want to talk about my dad just in case he starts thinking about his dad. I mean, it's nice of you to think that, but again, it all depends where that person's at.
Right, yeah.
That person could be like, here, Seb, my dad died, but it doesn't mean that your dad died.
Yeah.
And it's like, I like hearing about your dad. Yeah, he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
You're a good friend. I like hearing about your dad.
Yeah.
So
it's just different horses for courses.
It is, man, because I know it's like an easy answer per se, but for me, I would never be like, oh, don't you dare talk about him, even straight after.
So the best thing was what you were saying, like in general, just for someone who's looking and trying to get some sort of advice, would be not get them to open up, but allow them to see that they can open up if you open up to them first. Yeah. And would you say like checking in?
It's also like place and time as well.
Yeah.
If you're in work,
obviously
it's probably not the best.
The right time. Yeah.
Or if you're on the subway.
Yeah.
But so those things in itself are signs that the person is sincere.
Right.
So, if you're my friend, but the only time you ever ask me how I'm doing is on the subway or at work, I know that you really aren't willing to hear how I'm feeling.
Yeah, right.
But if me and you are walking down the street and it's not that busy, or if me and you are in our house, and then you go, here, how we doing? Then I go, okay, he probably wants to hear about it. I'll tell him.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
So it's little things, man.
Yeah.
Little things.
Yeah.
Anyway, man, let's get on to you and what you've been dealing with. On the start, but how was it coming back for Christmas? It's the second time since the divorce, right?
I can't I don't know when the like legal divorce happened. I think it's probably about a year ago, I reckon. So I think if it was a year ago, if I'm correct, then it's about probably the first time. Actually, well, I came back home because my nan died. That was unfortunate, so I had to come home for that. But yeah, but the separation happened 3 Christmases ago. So what was that? So 2000 Christmas of 2016. That was like when the separation happened, and then all the rest is just kind of legal and formalities. You know what I mean? Um, yeah, it was interesting. It was difficult. For anyone who's been on our website, they can see I kind of wrote a poem a while back called "Maybe One Day" about kind of dreading coming back to like coming home for Christmas, because I knew that obviously while I wanted to see my family and stuff, I knew that there was gonna some conversations were gonna have to be said to make sure that we kind of start 2020 on a better footing and not have this whole situation drag on, and just kind of accept it for what it is, and just kind of hopefully let the animosity die, and just move on with all of our lives independently, because unfortunately I think it's a fact for 99% of divorces basically that they always get to that ugly stage. I think they start out with good intentions, like at least my parents did. They started out wanting to be amicable and whatever else, but then it gets to the nitty gritty and the lawyers get involved and whatever else, and before you know it, it does get quite ugly, which is difficult to see because ultimately they're your parents, and there's a difference between seeing your parents argue, which I've seen my parents argue loads of times, and most people I'm sure have seen their parents argue. But this gets difficult because there's kind of, oh, don't worry, they'll patch it back up in an hour's time. It's more like it just kind of lingers and festers on, and then obviously the kids invariably get brought into it because it is what it is. It's obviously on our parents' mind all the time. It's a very stressful situation, and so we hear bits and bobs, and you hear one side of the story, you hear the other side of the story, and I always think like on balance, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Um, but yeah, obviously living abroad, I kind of get it in snapshots, whereas like my sister, she has it on the day to day, which is worse, obviously. Oh well, they all have it on the day to day. My mum, my dad, and my sister.
But would your sister be filling you in on a day-to-day basis, or would she keep it to herself?
No, I've asked her to. I've like told her that obviously I'm there for her because she's my younger sister. So obviously we all feel like we have a duty of care towards her, and she's had a rough couple of years anyway, apart from the divorce. Um, but her opinion is, look, what are you going to be able to do? Like, you're in Madrid. It's not as if you can help anyway. And if I tell you, then you're just going to get upset almost for no reason because there's nothing you can do about it. So she's almost, which I, to some extent, I thank her for, but she almost wants to keep me ignorant in the sense of ignorance is bliss. Do you know what I mean? So so I don't get the day to day, but every now and again, like when I call my mom or I call my dad or whatever, I'll get a little snapshot of what's happening at home. I don't get the full picture, obviously, but I knew that kind of as my responsibility to Demelza, my younger sister, and just to the family in general was like, right, let's try to kind of put these last 3 years behind us if we can, and just move on from it and just start 2020. Look, they're not going to be best friends, and I'm not expecting that, but just everyone move on with their own life now. And I always say that like the thing that I've mainly noticed from a divorce is that when you're a family and you have that family nucleus, the the relationships, they're interdependent, they're codependent. So your relationship with your sister affects your relationship with your father, which affects your relationship with your mother, which will affect. I mean, it's like a spider's web, and you're all linked. Whereas when a divorce takes place, it almost cuts that, and so then your relationships become singular and linear. So it's just a matter of, if for example, if I get on with my mum, but my sister and my mum have had a fallout, there's nothing I can do to really make my mum and my sister get back together, so to say. I have to kind of leave that up to those two, and it's whatever they feel is right, and vice versa. So then what happens is it's kind of everyone is I wouldn't say acting out of their own interests, but like I said, that nucleus, that codependency is no longer there anymore. And so you kind of get this very fractured situation, which for me has been, I'd say, probably the most difficult thing about the divorce, because obviously being Italian, we were very family orientated, and like the family nucleus was the absolute number one in our lives. And I think I've only recently probably discovered this, but I would say that I probably suffered from a loss of identity, or an identity crisis. I don't know how you put it, but I think everyone has their own image of how they view themselves and how others view them. And I always viewed myself as son of, brother of. And so when that kind of, obviously I'm still my mum and my father's son, and obviously I'm still my sister's daughter. But when that family nucleus breaks down, it can be very difficult to, at least for me, because that's how I saw myself, to kind of see, okay, well, who are you now? Also because we'll touch on this maybe in a different podcast, but my what do you call it, exterior family, my outer family, my greater family, the cousins, aunties, uncles, all that side. There was a big shitstorm that happened over there, so we kind of lost. We lost the immediate family and the greater family kind of all at one within the same 3 year period. So from having this huge Italian family that was so interconnected and at least seemed to be so close to each other, you then within a year or two become like this nomad type thing. At least that's the feeling that I had. So that was difficult to come to terms with. So yeah, that was probably what was difficult. And then I came home and I had the conversations with my mum and my dad, and I think, and also my sister was there, and I think they were useful. I think they served their purpose, but I guess, only time will tell whether those conversations will actually yield any different results, or whether we're just going to carry on in the same type of shtick. That I can't tell just yet. We probably have to do a review on that in six months or so. But at least the reaction was the reaction that I was hoping for, which was one of open ears, acceptance, and kind of understanding. Because it wasn't the problem that I've had, and I understand, but the problem that I've had is that when I talk to my mum or my dad, sometimes they can get defensive. And so then what was supposed to be a nice conversation, or not nice, but a low key conversation that was just to express someone's feelings, turns out into an argument because someone takes it as a personal attack, which is never the intention. And so I was worried that that would be the case again, because obviously at Christmas time, the last thing you want to do is be shouting at each other. So I kind of came at it from a very like, look, this isn't to say that you're, a terrible mother or father or whatever. This is just to say these actions have made me feel a certain way. I just like if you'd appreciate it, like appreciate how I feel, and let's see how we can move on together to kind of get back to that steady relationship, rather than just having a relationship out of duty, at one of like, oh, I'm your son, you're my mother, so I'm father, so I have to have respect for you. But that's it, where there's no actual love there, there's no real bond. I don't want that for myself nor for them. And obviously, and I think that's almost more pertinent when I move abroad, because I'm in Madrid. So it's harder for me to kind of reconnect, because it's not like we can do it on it. It's not a day-to-day thing that we can work on. It's a every 3-4 month thing. So, the conversation that I had with my mum, for example, was basically the long and short of it was just that, the long and short of it was just that I wanted to see her more. And I wanted to, I saw her once in 2019, not including my nan's funeral or Christmas, because obviously every year I'm going to come home for Christmas. So in the whole of 2019, I only actually saw her one time. And I was like, look, like it's not good enough from both of us. Because you never know what could happen. I could cross the road tomorrow morning on the way to work and get hit by a bus. And the last time I saw you was 8 months ago, and it's not as if I live in Australia where you go, well, okay, fair enough. It's however many miles or thousands of miles away. And tickets are £3,000. You know what I mean? I live in Madrid. It's a 50 quid ticket and a 2 hour flight, and that works for me as well. Like I can make I've realised that I could have made more effort. Maybe go back to London. My mum loves London, so maybe I could have. That was an option that I think I was maybe at the time too stubborn to almost ask for, because I kind of felt like it was her duty to see me and make the effort as the mother. And then I think upon like further reflection, I realised that that it takes two to tango basically. And how did like for all my mum thinks, like maybe my mum thought that I was perfectly happy in Madrid because I didn't say anything, whereas I'm in Madrid stewing. But she's like, oh well, he's getting on with his life. He lives with Louisa. He's happy. Do you know what I mean? It's so like that miscommunication. Then it's impossible to ever sort anything out. So that's why the conversation was important. And then with my dad, it was just more of a conversation of, look, like I know things have been hard. Obviously, business is hard at the moment with Brexit and everything else. Kind of England is almost in a stalemate. It's almost frozen in time. People aren't spending money as they used to, and so my dad's restaurant is a fine dining establishment, so it's not as if people go out there whenever they fancy. It's a big event for people. So if people aren't spending money, it's difficult for it to get going. And then you've got the stress of the divorce and so on and so forth. But my dad's kind of very insular, and I was like, look, Dad, like whether it's going to therapy or whether it's talking to like your friends or whatever it is, but I was like, you have to express your feelings, not to Demelza, but you have to express your feelings to people and like come out in the open, because people are there for you, and it's just not healthy to always think things over. And I think my dad and myself, I think we're very similar. We both think things over a lot in our own minds and almost play out conversations in our own minds rather than kind of have those conversations. We just play them over and over and over and over and over, and to the point where we drive ourselves crazy. And I truly believe in, that it might be cliche, but that saying of a problem shared is a problem halved. So I just think it was important, and I hope my dad listens, and I hope he does, just spends more time with his friends when he can and talks and just kind of releases that pressure valve a little bit. So yeah, so we'll see. Like I said, we'll see if in the future things change. But I'm hopeful. I'm at least starting 2020 in a more hopeful environment than I started 2019 or 2018 for that matter. So
Thanks, man. Thanks for sharing. I have a few questions. The first question is, you said you were suffering a bit from an identity crisis, but how do you see yourself now? I mean, do you think has that changed?
that's a good question. I don't know. Well, I think that I've replaced what I thought I lacked with my exterior family, like my extended family, with my friends, because when the shit hit the fan, I kind of told a lot of friends, and then it got to a point where I would just tell anyone who would listen, because it was just so overwhelming that I almost couldn't talk about anything else, because it was just the only thing that was on my mind. And there are a good few friends who, bless them, and over the years, and it has been 2 3 years now, over the years, have constantly like listened to me and been there for me. Not necessarily offer advice, because that's not always what I wanted, but just be a soundboard. And so I always love my friends anyway. I'm quite like an intense person. Like if you're my friend, you're my friend forever, and if you're not, well, better not to talk about it. But I kind of have taken those friends on in an even more immediate way, and I kind of now see them as my extended family. Not even extended. I almost see them as my immediate family, to be quite honest, because without them being there, I'm not sure how I would have got through it, to be quite honest. So they were really helpful, and it was comforting to know that they were there, because you always like to think that your friends are, who you think they are, but until like a real moment arrives, there's kind of, it's that, what's the litmus test. It's like how can you tell if your friends are really there through thick and thin, until you have to go through those thick and thin moments. And so that was comforting to know that my friends aren't just all talk, and that they are like real friends that I can like truly rely on. And especially because obviously moving abroad, I see those friends even less now. And so when I move abroad, when I moved abroad, I worried slightly maybe that those relationships would die out to some extent just because of distance, and obviously everyone's starting a new chapter in their own lives. And I mean, you know how it is. One person gets a girlfriend and this person gets a boyfriend, and before you know it, you see them less and less because they're doing their own thing. And so to know that actually, despite what boyfriend or girlfriend they may have or what new friends they may make, I'll always have that set group of friends. They'll always be there for me. Is really reassuring. And that's why, for example, the 27th of December, when we have that reunion, is like that's the most important day for me, like in terms of in the Christmas holidays, because it's the thing I most look forward to. So that was reassuring. But yeah, I think I definitely do still see myself as son of and brother of. But yeah, like I said, I think the biggest thing is now that my friends, to me now, they're like they've cemented their place in my family, as it were, and it just kind of I was always of the opinion that, well, I've come to the opinion, sorry, that you can't help who your family are, and despite the divorce, I love my immediate family very much, and they're all very good people. But my extended family, unfortunately, some of them turned out to be not who we thought they were. And you can't help that. That's not in your power. You know what I mean? You are just born into whoever you're born into. And if you happen to be born into a loving, amazing family, that's brilliant. But if you don't, it's not your fault. But you can choose your friends. And so I've taken that like quite literally and very seriously. And so it's good to know that I've chosen people that have good character and that don't waver. And that will always be there for me. And I hope that I'm sure they do, but I hope that they know that I'm always there for them regardless. So that was very comforting. I'd say that's probably how I see myself now.
Did it make you also reevaluate the often cemented idea that your family can do no wrong? You said how you see your friends as family, but you know how when your family do something wrong, the excuse you make for them is, that's just my dad or my uncle or my sister. That's just the way they are. Did it make you think, wait, is being my uncle enough to excuse all of the bad behavior, even though he's just a person who knows me like your friends know you, but you wouldn't accept it from a friend?
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, obviously, I don't have kids now, but whenever I do have kids and start to have that extended family and whatever else, like, from my side, there's going to be no, I'm not taking any shit. Like, just because there's two reasons. Like, time is so limited, and for example, with my extended family in Italy, I used to go over there every summer. Every summer we'd fly over, and that, okay, when you're like 10 and 11, it is what it is. But when you're 15, 16, and your friends back home are starting to go to festivals and this, that, and the other, and starting to go to, like, they're starting to have their own holidays together as a group, and I would always say no because I felt this duty to go over to Italy and to see them. And then you kind of look at how things have panned out and you go, actually, like, obviously that duty was completely misplaced. And so now, like, if I think anyone's not kind of pulling their weight or is just being an idiot or whatever, they'll get their comeuppance. And I'm not gonna, like, because my time is just too precious now, and that is time that I could rather spend with a friend or with my sister or whoever, quality time, rather than like, oh, we've got to go see Uncle John Smith because he's our uncle, but everyone hates him and he's a dickhead. I'm like, nah, like, I'm not about that anymore. Like, I'm sorry, just the fact that you married into the family, or you're some sort of, we have shared some distant DNA, is not enough to make me accept your bullshit anymore. And like I said, like, I live in Madrid now, so I don't see my friends that much. So my time is almost even more precious. Like, I really value my time now, especially when I'm back in England, because it's like I want to see as many people as I can, but I've only got however whatever it is 2 weeks, and so I'm not going to go see people who I can't tolerate, or it is what it is. Like, one of my uncles, one of them, just talks an utter shite. He is just a serial bullshitter, and it's just like, he's not a horrible man, but he is just a bullshitter. And it's just, why do I have to sit through that anymore? There's no reason. Like, just because you are my uncle does not mean I have to. And the worst part is I can't pull him up on it because he's family, in inverted commas. So you have to just accept it. And it's like you said, but I would never accept that from my friends. Like, if my friends was chatting shit, I would tell them, I'd be like, why are you, like, saying that? That's complete rubbish. But because he's the uncle, you just have to accept it. So yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. Like, I don't see family and friends any different in terms of behavior. Like at the end of the day, people are people, and I think the divorce that kind of happened with the divorce because obviously you put your parents on a pedestal, don't you? And you kind of always see them as the perfect beings, the example as what you should be as an adult. And then when the divorce happens and you kind of realize that they're just two people trying to work their way through life and that they make as many mistakes as anyone else. And in some ways it was upsetting to take that off the pedestal, but in other ways it was almost liberating to be like, oh, like my mum and dad they're just humans. Like they're not these angels that have been sent from God above and they know what's right and wrong. Like they make as many mistakes as the rest of us. So yeah, that's been an eye opener for sure.
Yeah, I also look at it a bit as a step towards liberation, where it's like, oh yeah, I used to look at my dad in a way where I would go, yeah, that's just my dad, that's just how he is, it's just him. And now I've learned more to look at him and think, oh, my dad does that this way probably because of this, and that's probably not a good thing. And then when you realize your parents are flawed people like the rest of us, it's probably a relief because they don't have to figure it out. So maybe it's okay to not have it figured out yourself, you know? It's always going to be difficult. There's always going to be challenges. Nobody is ever going to reach a point where everything they do is right or, you know, smooth or compassionate, you know, like there's always going to be some stumbling blocks, and it's really about the journey and just trying to be better wherever possible.
Yeah, I think with especially with the divorce, I think there's been a definite shift in relationship. Like my family was, we were obviously there was love there and whatever else, but we were very kind of respectful. Like I was never like friends with my mum and dad. Like I never had that relationship where we'd go out to the pub together and we'd all get pissed together. And I mean, some people have those relationships, some people don't. That wasn't my relationship with my mum and dad. My mum and dad's relationship was, it was built upon like respect, and there was that boundary, and that boundary kind of got taken down, and now we're almost on an equal footing, all of us, me, my sister, my dad and my mum. And it's a much more, I think it's a much more adult relationship now, rather than, or as not, it wasn't so much this, but rather than kind of the teacher and the student, it's kind of become, okay, we're equals now. And you've made, like, talking about my parents, like they've made so many mistakes when it comes to the divorce and how it kind of got handled. I mean, and so did Demelza and I, how we dealt with the divorce, and it kind of just, it took down the mask, and it took the wool from our eyes, and there's definitely been a shift in the relationship whereby I think we now all see each other as equals, and it's not, oh well, my mum said this so I have to do it this way because that's how my mum said it. It's like, no, like that's how she thinks, but like I don't agree, and I'm perfectly within my rights to, number one, make my own mistakes, it's my life, and number two, I don't have to accept everything as just given. Like it is, yeah, you might have 30 years on me, but you're still making mistakes now, just like I will still make mistakes when I'm 50 years old. And so it definitely took that level of innocence away from myself and my sister, and definitely changed the relationship that we have. And I think probably for better. So I'm not sure how healthy it is to see your parents as these perfect beings who never make any wrongs, because ultimately that's a lie. I mean, okay, obviously I don't want my parents to go through a divorce, but the fact is, whether I knew it or not, my parents were making mistakes my whole upbringing, because they're just human beings. That's what human beings do better than anything else, is make mistakes. And so I think it's definitely more healthy to kind of just see them for who they are and see the relationship that we have for what it is, so that we can work on it from a foundation of complete and utter truth, and take away this kind of masquerade of, oh, he's my father, so I can't ever say anything bad about him, and whatever he says goes. Do you know what I mean? There's much more honesty about the relationship, I think.
That surely is a big positive then, yeah.
Yeah. There are silver linings with the divorce. It's not all negative, and I think it's taken me a good while to like come to that conclusion. And you know how I said about the relationships are singular, they're linear now, they're not codependent. I think the positive of that is that we can now try to build and improve our relationship individually with each other, and go, look, like this is how we worked when we were a family nucleus, but now that we're not a family nucleus anymore, let's like actually do things, like let's maybe have more of that friendly relationship. Like, Christ, I'm 23 now. Like, let's go to a pub or come to Madrid and let's just sit in the terrace and just chew the fat and just talk about life. Like, there's no reason for us to have this kind of boundary that we had, and I don't think we would have come to that conclusion had it not been for the divorce, unfortunately, because we by then what we were already 20 years down the line, and that just was our relationship. So yeah, man, there are silver linings. And look, if things could be done again, obviously Captain Hindsight, but if things could be done again, I'm certain my parents would have done things differently. I definitely would have reacted to things differently. But it is what it is. You learn as you go on. You make so many mistakes, and hopefully they're just mistakes that you can help you in the future. So that, God forbid, but so that if I ever got divorced when I was older, I would know what to do, what not to do, how things, how the kids would feel. That's what I was saying to my parents a lot of the time. I was like, look, like, luckily for you guys, you're not kids of a divorce, so you don't know what it feels like to be a child of a divorced and estranged parents. And I think that goes for a lot of people in our generation. Like, a lot of my friends are divorced, like, they come from divorced families, but their parents are like, they grew up in a very normal traditional family. So it's hard for the parents to empathize with the kids because they don't really have any idea what they're going through. And I think our generation will be a lot better placed to, so that if we ever do go through a divorce, to like actually empathize, because we'll be like, look, I know how you feel because I went through that when I was 5, when I was 10, when I was 15, when I was 20. Like, I know exactly what you're feeling, and if I can learn from my own experiences, then obviously I'll be better off for it.
For sure, man. There's actually another question I wanted to ask you, where we had a discussion maybe 2 or 3 months ago about a similar topic, and you said that your perspective has changed massively recently. Could you talk me through this shift in perspective?
Yeah, I came to realize that there were 4 victims in this divorce, and not just myself and my sister. My parents are also victims or casualties, I suppose, of the end of a love story, I guess you can call it. So it took me to realize that, to see that they're suffering just as much as we are, in obviously very different ways, but that gave me a level of understanding and forgiveness and patience towards them both. So when they make their errors, it's just as know that it's not as if they're both completely happy with the situation and then it's just me and Demelza who are suffering. There's more to it, and they are going through it for the first time as well, and it's completely new territory for us all as a family. So that's the first thing. And then secondly, just to give a bit of background, my mum left my dad, and there was another man, and I absolutely just hated that other man. And there's probably a part of me, the Sicilian part of me, that just wanted to. He lives in Colorado. There's part of me that wanted to fly out to Colorado and shoot him. And then I had to meet it 3 years later, 3 years after the fact. So I've been holding this like pent up rage to a man I've never met for 3 years, and I met him over Christmas. He's a nice guy. Like, look, I don't agree with what he did. I don't agree with what he did. If I was in his shoes, and obviously my mum, to some extent, or well, not to some extent, to a large extent, if I was in her shoes, I would have done things very differently. But just how I was telling my dad in the conversation that we had between us, that we have to let things go, and whether we agree with them or not, it's not healthy to carry things around like a medallion around your neck, just weighing you down. I came to that own realization within myself, and that hating this man wasn't going to do anything for me, and it certainly wasn't going to do anything for the relationship I had with my mum. There was no way that my relationship with my mum was going to improve if I kept on hating this man. Now, that's not to say that I'm going to be his best friend and we're going to go on fucking runs together and trips, just me and him on the lakes, but I can at least respect him as like the partner of my mum, as a bare minimum. Do you know what I mean? He's on a one strike and you're out, because I don't owe him that kind of same level as forgiveness as I owe my family and all the rest of them. But I came to the realization that, yeah, holding these grudges is just not healthy. And that was hard to swallow. It was a hard pill to swallow. And it was almost meeting like meeting the monster that I'd created in my mind, and then I met him, and I was like, oh, like he's just this placid bloke, like he's not like some sort of fucking Mr. Evil. And so I just came, yeah, so that was like the shift. That was the shift in kind of my mentality. And it was just like, look, I just came to the realization, who knows whether him and my mum will be together for the rest of their lives or if it's going to be a short term thing or whatever. But the realization was, if I really am serious about making the relationship that I have with my own mum better, then that comes with accepting her life as it is now and not trying to build the relationship I have with my mum based on her life as it was 10 years ago. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's difficult. Like I've never agreed in the step family. That just is a social construct that I just don't agree with flat out. I mean, I've said that to Louise. She's had a step family for 10 years now. She got her family. My parents got divorced when she was like 10 or 11, and I remember telling her, I was like, "Look, your sister is your sister. Like, but the rest of them, they're like, yeah, they are what they are, but they're not your like out and out family. Like, forget it. Like, they're just, and that's just how it is. And it's the, I don't think people like to hear it, but as far as I see, it's the truth. You know, if my sister and I were in a burning building, and with his two kids, would this man save me and my sister? No, he'd save his kids first, and then if he could, without killing himself, he may try to come back in for me and Demelza. But he's not coming in for us first. Do you know what I mean? Whereas, like, yeah, so that's how I see it. Yeah.
However, I mean, yeah, I get what you mean, but I think it might be a goal of yours, or it could be a goal of yours, to put yourself and your sister in a position where he can build a rapport with you guys. So then, if this crazy circumstance did occur and you were in this fire, then he might look at you fairly similarly to how he looks at his kids. You know what I mean? Not gonna do it now when you're looking at him like this guy is just this bloke who is now seeing my mom, and yeah, like it does flow both ways. You can only have well, most of the time you can only have a strong affection or like relationship with someone if both parties are open towards it.
To some extent, I'm definitely talking out my ass here, but just got to be honest. But like, there is, I think most people will tell you there's that natural bond that you have with your kid when it's your kid, and I don't think that can ever be reached when it's a step, or when it's like even maybe adoption's slightly different because you've taken care of them from day dot. But when it's a step from, like, he hasn't known me, and then all of a sudden 23 years in, it's like, oh, here's your new son. Like, nah, like, give it a rest. Like, it is what it is. Like, I've got my parents, I've got my sister, he's got his kids, and that's that. Like, don't invite me to Thanksgiving. Do you know what I mean? It's cool. Like, when I see you, I'll shake your hand, we'll have a nice conversation, but I'm not interested in like in that part of it. And just like I told you, how I've kind of replaced my extended family with my friends. I'm not now looking to get a new extended family. Like, fuck that. Like, families have their own problems. I don't want, and do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not interested in having new problems. Our family has had enough problems for the last 3 years. I'm really not interested in it, and it's not even from a place of like malice or hatred. It's just from a place of complete and utter honesty, whereby there's no point in me trying to form this real close bond. It's just like, nah, like I'll be respectful when we like, we had nice conversations. Like, he's an intelligent guy. Like, it is what it is. But I'm not going to. Do you know what I mean? He's never going to see me as his son, and I'm not going to call up my mum and be like, oh, how's dad doing? Like, nah, like, do you know what I mean? It's first name basis, as far as I'm concerned.
However, Seb, right? Will you
Yeah.
give me this? Yeah, based on your altered approach or altered perspective over the last few months, will you say now that you refuse to totally rule out a possibility of you building a rapport in 2, 3, 4 years?
I rule out seeing him as family. Like, I'm sure over time, if they're still together, we'll get somewhat closer. I mean, that's just natural, I think, unless he turns out to be a complete dickhead. But I mean, that's just natural. But yeah, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna see him as like my number two dad. Do you know what I mean? Substitution dad. Nah. And also, I think it is different when this situation happens when you're 23 years old. because like you've already got your family. Like it's different if maybe it happens when you're 5, and that man is the man who took you to football practice, and he's the man who like cooked you Sunday roast, and he's the man who did this. Do you know what I mean? But like, bro, I'm living my life, so we're gonna see each other if you're lucky once every 6 months. So the rapport that we're gonna have is gonna be a rapport purely off conversation, not off any sort of experience. So I'm way too old to be getting a new family now. And I'm not interested in having brothers. Do you get me? Like, my sister's my sister. Like, it is what it is.
But man, like I can imagine if I had a chat with him, he wouldn't say that he wants to be any sort of father figure to you or anything. He would just like to be interested in your life because you are the son of the woman he is seeing, you know. And if you get along and you both like Arsenal and you both like doing this and you both like doing that, he would like. I'm sure he'd be like, yeah, that'd be great. But I still want to let him know that, you know, he's a very important person in the most important person in my life's life. Do you know, like,
Yeah, but it's like it's purely consequential though, isn't it? It's not like if he split up with my mum, he'd be like, "Oh, Seb, what's the crack? Like, let's go down to the bar." Like, nah. Like, I'm only
maybe, man,
nah.
maybe.
Well, if he did, I'd be like, "Yeah, see you, pal." But like, do you know what I mean? I'm only important to him as long as my mum's important to him, and that's absolutely fine. By the way, like that's there's no grudges held there. Like that is what it is. And just like I'm only talking to him as long as my mum is with him. Like it's not as if the minute like if they split up, it's not as if I'm gonna be like, oh, listen, man. Like I heard about you and mum. Like it's really upsetting. Anyway, I've got a party going on the 25th. Do you want to come down? Like nah. Do you get me? Like it is what it is. It's a relationship built out of pure circumstance, and so I'm up to being accepting and to being civil and to be polite and to when we have a conversation to have an interesting conversation. As long as I'm not cold towards him, but I'm not about trying to build some deep relationship because it's just not going to be there. So yes, that's that. Do you have any more questions, or should we leave it there for now? We can revisit. I feel like this is a topic that we can always revisit.
I have a feeling that I'll throw in some questions on a random basis.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I'll look forward to those ones then.
Beautiful.
But listen, guys, thank you. If you've been listening all the way, thank you so much. Obviously, this is the first ever one that we've done. We're hoping to get better as we go on. So please bear with us. We'll be making mistakes along the way. Look, I hate to be a beg, but do like, subscribe, all the rest of that gubbins. We need it. Give the 5-star review, spread the message, get the podcast out to the people. We need as many people as we can to listen to it if they think it's interesting, if you find it interesting. We have also released a second episode already that I recorded with my good friend and award-winning journalist Rosie Dowsing, and it's about her documentary on fathers' mental health, and we talk about the differences between men and women and how they express their feelings. So go ahead, download that and listen to that. Guys, we really appreciate you listening. It means the world to us that anyone is listening to this, to be quite frank. So
thanks a million, guys.
I can't thank you guys enough, but we hope you'd enjoy it and that you keep on tuning in week on week. But until next time, have a good one.